Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here, right at the top of the show, Joy has got music news and some kind of band story for you. Take it away, Joy.
All right, so we'll just start with the music news. Have you seen this thing? Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are moving to dismiss. They're under a lawsuit right now for a track called Living in a Ghost Town. Have you seen any of this, Tim?
No, I think that's completely escaped me.
Okay, so basically the Rolling Stones have filed for a motion to dismiss the copyright infringement lawsuit by Spanish songwriter Sierra. Don't come for me, Fernandez. I don't know if I said that right. Basically, and the Rolling Stones are one of those bands, I think that this happens to them every so often. He's filing for several reasons, though, but they're asking for dismissal. The plaintiff's choice includes an improper venue, failure to state a claim, lack of personal jurisdiction over a European-based rights management company, on top of just suing them and saying that their song sounds eerily similar to his own. So he's like trying to sue them in like 5 different things. Basically, he filed a copyright infringement suit in Louisiana federal court. He's professionally known as Angel Slang. Recognized and protected elements from his song So Sorry, Seed of God, appearing in the Rolling Stones track Living in a Ghost Town. Fernandez demanded a jury against defendants Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, UMC Inc., BMG Rights Management LLC, and Promo Pump BV. Like he went in hard and brought in every big hitter that's anything to do with the Rolling Stones. Now, I think it's going to get dismissed because I'm just going to say it. I see these happen a lot, and no offense, but Angel Slang, I think you think more people know you than they do.
Yeah, that's someone I've never, ever heard of. And to me, it sounds like somebody who had the money to file the lawsuit and it's completely frivolous. And they're hoping that the Rolling Stones will just settle it out of court and it will go away. And that's what they're hoping for.
Or one little thing they find will stick, right? Like one of these small little things will stick and they'll get some money out of it. But they said it's a 26-page court document. Basically, the Rolling Stones have come out just saying, this is all ridiculous. We just please just dismiss this. They did not settle, and they said they're not going to settle. But I'll be curious to see how it comes out, because it's literally like they said that there's no backing for any of it. They don't even understand you cannot exercise personal jurisdiction over the defendant's promo pub BV. Like he's just saying, I have jurisdiction over this.
Very weird, incredibly frivolous. And like you say, it will probably go absolutely nowhere.
But it's just interesting. I came across it the other day. I was like, I hadn't heard anything about this. And I have no idea what the 2020 track Living in a Ghost Town is. I just don't know what that is. But anyway.
I don't know. I mean, the Rolling Stones are putting out new music. I mean, they've released new music, reasonably recently, but no, I don't know those tracks. I just know all the classic songs.
Exactly. All right. So my next story is about a local band. Me and Tim are not naming and shaming. We're not shaming this band. I'm good on them for getting on the stage, doing what they love. We love a good local band. But I was at a 4th of July event in a different town, about 15 minutes from the 4th of July event. Tim was at, that was about 15 minutes the other way. So, and both of these had some local bands going, and I was laughing because there was just some really funny things that happened that we've talked about on the podcast so much that I wanted to point out. Now, first of all, there was Tim's favorite thing that happens with every local band ever is there was a drum solo that lasted about a minute too long that consisted of a very reminiscent Wipeout floor tom meets rolling tom kind of, and then ending with a hi-hat. And when I say it lasted about a minute too long, I think this drum solo lasted probably about 4 minutes long. That's a really long time for a drum solo. I don't know about you, Tim, but I kind of think they should stay around the 1 minute mark.
Yeah, I mean, we typically close the Flagger Hill show with the drummer Randall playing a drum solo. We do the song One Way Out, the Allman Brothers song One Way Out.
Yeah.
And then I play my guitar break, and then he goes into a drum solo, and then we all leave the stage and we leave him to it. And that is our last song. And normally at that point, people are well intoxicated and they think it's the best thing ever. Now, I think Randall probably keeps it to a good time. I never really feel that he's gone on too long, because he does a few bits and does a few other bits, and then he's back in the beat, and then we come back on the stage and finish the song.
Yeah, so this one lasted a little bit too long, which Tim says is a common thing in local bands. I've heard him state about that. My favorite, though, was they tried to do the jam band kind of connecting song things. It's very popular with house bands, right? You just kind of riff through till you get to your next song in your set list. But me and my best friend Molly, now my best friend Molly is a wonderful musician. She plays percussion, she plays the guitar, she plays the ukulele, she plays the bass. She's been a musician my entire life, has been in like high school band, like just wonderful musician. So me and her are always kind of doing like me and Tim do, we're going back about music. And we were discussing, I was listening and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then out of nowhere, I realized their jam band kind of house music thing was When the Saints Go Marching. Is this when the Saints Go Marching in? And you see her little ears perk up and she's like, oh my God, it is. It was like a groovy kind of play on When the Saints Go Marching in, and I died laughing because, it worked. I'll give it to him, it worked, but it just from the regular standpoint, if you weren't paying attention, you might not have got it. But it was definitely When the Saints Go Marching in.
Well, now, I can tell you, so I don't do this in gigs, but in sound checks. Sometimes I'll make my guitar solo play the theme tune to the A-Team. I have done that before. And sometimes if I'm playing a guitar solo and the song's in a major key, I may play the theme tune to Bullseye. And Bullseye being that 80s TV show about darts for Jim Bowen. Our UK listeners would know exactly what that is. Our US listeners would have no clue. But it has a cult following. The prizes were terrible. It was top 80s and 90s TV. Anyway, the theme, I play the theme tunes to that sometimes. And of course, nobody knows what I'm playing. And I'm just sort of smiling to myself as I do it.
That's fair. So, I'm not just, it was just one of those, it caught me off guard. I'm like, wait a second, this is When the Saints Go Marching in. So anyway, then the band, the lead singer was pretty good. They're hit or miss with local bands. You could have really good. Tim has a really good lead singer to his band right now, but I know he's talked about he's had some that were kind of rough in the past. This one wasn't bad, but he did this vocal fry thing that is very. And if you don't know what vocal fry is, so a good example would be if you're singing "Born in the USA." That's just the way you'd sing it, right? Well, he did this thing where it sounded like "Born in the USA" at the end of every ad-lib, and how the Kardashians talk like that with vocal fry, and so. What could have been what I think was decent singing, he did that at the end of every chorus, every verse became this weird vocal fry thing. Is that something you've seen in local singers, Tim? Because it just threw me off.
No, I think around here you tend to get people who sing in more that kind of southerny drawl type, country type way, rather than an actual vocal fry technique. There are not many bands around here that have really good lead singers. I will say that. And I'm lucky that I'm in a band that probably has the best singer around here.
I could agree with Tim on that, yeah.
Being completely honest. Bill is fantastic. I said the band I used to be in had a less than stellar singer. And, I've played with some other bands and, the singers were good. But it's rare that you go out and see someone at the local band level and you hear them sing and you're like, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that was kind of weird for me. And I wondered if it was a way for him to cover up when he wasn't comfortable hitting a note. Because there are techniques Tim saying you could do things like that, or if it's just an artistic choice that I didn't get. But it was very interesting to hear that. But the kicker was Tim could write out every song that he has ever played in every band and just the general set list that comes off the top of his head, and it would have been this set list.
Yeah, it's a thing. As I've said before, I don't know who decided these songs. And there's UK list and there's a US list and there's a bit of a crossover. But all these songs are being played by all the bands. I just don't know how we settled on this. When did Green River become such an amazing classic that every cover band has to play it, or Never Been to Spain, or I don't know, Breakdown, or Mary Jane's Last Dance? And I just all great songs, but when did they become staples?
I don't know, but this band went from Footloose, which there was more of the Blake Shelton version, and Molly goes, so it's a cover of a cover of a cover. And then there was was, of course, I'm pretty sure there was a Tom Petty song. Then there was, of course, Prince. Prince seems to be really popular in local bands. Every local band I see has some form of a Prince song in it. A lot of times it's Purple Rain, I'm going to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. This one was What's Party Like It's 1999. So still very Prince pop. And then I was writing Tim as these songs were coming up, and I was like, oh gosh, now what's coming next? We were like texting each other, and I went, oh gosh, they're taking us on a journey. And he went, is it Faithfully? I went, no, but what was it I said? Well, I stopped believing on the first chord. And they weren't a bad band. I don't want everybody to take it like this. It was just humorous to see all the really things Tim's pointed out in the podcast happen in about a 20-minute span.
I know. And the problem is if you don't play a lot of those classics, you won't get booked because the venue owners and places that book you, that's what they want. And I don't know. I mean, in Flagger Hill, we do, 50% of that stuff that you talk about. And then the other half is we try to do things that are just a little bit different that we hope people will like.
And the band was quite good. Like there was a keyboard, there was a bass player, there was a guitar player, there was a drummer, and then the singer. They weren't a bad band. They were just very classic. And Charlie pointed out to me, have you ever watched the movie The Wedding Singer?
No.
There's a movie called The Wedding Singer, and it's kind of making fun of like cliche wedding singers. And the way the singer kept doing the vocal fry was almost identical to a clip from that movie. I'm gonna have to get Tim to watch it. But the other thing is, vocal fry is bad on your vocal cords. Like if you do that constantly, it's your vocal cords like shaking together. So I don't know how he managed to do that so well for the entire set list.
I don't know. Maybe that person was a better singer than you thought.
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. They weren't bad, though. As far as local singers go, they were on the better category. I wouldn't say, they're obviously not Michael Bublé or something, but I don't know why that's where my brain went to. But anyway, so that was my little story. I just thought it was funny. I wanted to report back. But there's one thing that I'm going to add to this. This day was me sitting out in the hot sun at a table selling a bunch of junk that my husband's had around my house forever because he likes to buy and sell. We made very good money doing this. But I found out, I told Tim this, I am allergic to something in Equate brand sunscreen that caused me to break out in hives. And I found this out apparently for those PSA. If you're allergic to things, it might not show up for a day. So when you're out in the sun and you reapply the same sunscreen 3 different times throughout the same day, you might not know you're allergic to it till the next day.
Ooh. Now, Equate, isn't that a Walmart house brand? Yeah, I thought it was.
It's just the generic. I was walking through the store. I usually get like the Neutrogena one. That's the one I stand by. But I was walking through the store. I needed, we were buying some lawn chairs because we needed some more for this event. And I just grabbed it. I was like, oh, SPF. We're going to need this. Threw it in the bag. Never thought of it. Never in a million years have I had. I do have very sensitive skin. Band-Aids. I'm allergic to the adhesive in Band-Aids. Like I have to use like a wrap or something. But that seems to be genetic. Both my twin sister and my dad have it. But yeah, I learned the hard way. And now I'm having to take 2 different allergy pills for the next 2 weeks. They was determined it was an allergy because at first we thought, heat rash, things like that. But because it helped, the allergy medicine helped. And the only thing that was any different, Tim, was whatever chemicals are in the Walmart branded sunscreen.
Well, I can tell you, Joy, that you are just far too delicate for this world. That's the problem.
Fair enough. All right. Now, I think Tim has 2 things he would like to tell us about.
Yeah, so I'll follow on from local band news. Now, this is just telling people stuff. It's not really anything that's news. So I've been lucky the last couple of weeks, so 3 weeks, 4 weeks almost, we've played every week with Flagger Hill. And as it is warmer here now, we've been playing outside. Now, the last 3 gigs that I've played, it's almost been 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And as you know, anything about local bands, you typically have to get there at least a couple of hours before to set up. And then there's hanging about. And then there's the teardown at the end. Now, we played this Buchanan Carnival last week. We played at Smith Mountain Lake last night. And then a couple of weeks ago, we played at another place at Smith Mountain Lake. And it's all been in this 80, 90 degree heat. And I love playing with the band. They're great people. It's good to play music. I feel lucky that I get to do it every week, but goodness me, it was not comfortable.
And if like Charlie, if you're one of those people who's very sensitive to heat, like Charlie is very sensitive to heat, it gets even worse.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe this is TMI, but I took 3 T-shirts. The one I went in and took one to change into each set. The next morning, all 3 were still wet.
That's not a visual I needed, but I understand where you're coming from. It was so hot at this event.
It was terrible. And like when I got in my car last night after the gig, I think it was almost 11 p.m. after I finished loading up. And I cranked my car and the car said it was 86 degrees at 11:30 p.m.
And for those of us who are not in the area me and Tim live in, it's not a dry, it's a humid heat. There's a very big difference. And that's why the sweat is so bad. And that's why I was putting on so much sunscreen. Like Tim said, it's like 90 degrees the entire day. I'm sitting out in the hot sun. We did have a canopy over us, but you don't want to, I do not sunburn easy. I'm actually naturally pretty tan as a person because I have some Native American background. My dad looks very tan naturally because of that, but I thought I was doing the right thing, Tim. I thought I was doing the right thing.
You were doing what you were supposed to do, but our friends at Equate let you down once again.
I don't know. I mean, the weird thing is I've used all kinds of sunscreens, but I've also learned that apparently, for those who don't know this, allergies actually tend to show up in people in their 30s.
Okay.
Cool fact for anybody who's in their 30s. If you weren't allergic to it yesterday, you might be tomorrow. But yes, it has been very, very, very warm where we're at.
There we are. Anyhow, I have one music news item. Okay. And this is about The Darkness. Now, I know you're familiar with The Darkness, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Very familiar. They're one of my favorite bands.
Yeah. So they are coming out with the 20th anniversary version of their album Permission to Land. And Permission to Land was their debut album that came out in 2003. And it's getting the full-on sort of expanded treatment. It's a 4 CD DVD box set, and it's got B-sides and demos and live recordings, and they played at Nebworth Park, and it has some of the footage from there, and I think there's a book and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. But it's just interesting that I remember when The Darkness came out, and it was such a big thing, and they was like, yeah, rock is back with The Darkness. And now we're 20 years after that.
Well, and The Darkness rose to fame. As quickly as they rose to fame, they fell from fame. Like, it was like like, I don't know.
Well, what happened is that they got pretty big with Permission to Land. Mm-hmm. And then they came out with another album called A One-Way Ticket to Hell and Back. And then the singer, Justin Hawkins, had a substance abuse problem. And he stepped back from the band. And I think the bass player also left at the same time. And then the new bass player took vote, started singing in the band, and it was terrible. And I think if they didn't break up, it just sort of completely fell apart. And then at some point, Justin got clean, and then the band came back together. Now, Justin had a side project called Hot Leg for a while. Mm-hmm. And the drummer, Darby Todd, was a drummer of Hot Leg, who's a gentleman I used to play with at the Red Lion Twickenham at the jam session. And he's someone I saw in Rocky Mount when he was playing with Martin Barr from Jethro Tull last year. But I think he did the Hot Leg thing, and then The Darkness came back together, and boom, here we are. The other thing is that they are touring the United States on the back of this anniversary, and unsurprisingly, they're coming nowhere near here.
Oh man, I got all smiles because that would be a band I would go see if they were anywhere as close to us.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the dates here. Philadelphia, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. That's probably the closest. D.C. is probably the closest. But, I mean, that's 5 hours of driving.
Mm-hmm. And sadly, it's probably going to be over the summer, so it's going to be hot and probably outdoors.
Well, it's October.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay, well, that's not terrible. I mean, I might if I already had something else that I was going to DC for. But as me and Tim had talked about, to go to a concert for us, like a big concert, we always had to travel at least 2 hours to Charlotte is generally kind of what we have to do. Smaller concerts go to like, if you're like, I watched the Village People in Roanoke, but that's not like a big, there's only like 2 founding members left. But with that being said, it usually becomes like a full day thing. If you don't want to have to drive back that night because the concert goes on for a very long set list, you're going to have to get a hotel, pay for food. It becomes very expensive very quickly.
It does. And as we've said before, nobody seems to come to this area anymore. I mean, I talk to people say that Roanoke, which is our nearest town, used to get all these big names, but we don't even get the, I mean, for sort of the US audience, The Darkness are probably a lower tier band. Yeah. They're certainly not playing like, I don't know,
Exactly.
Madison Square Garden or something like that. But, the people have heard of them, but nobody ever comes around here.
Well, and I think that it's just I think we just don't have a good venue. We don't have a good setup. We don't have like a lot of concerts now are really big into like the arena thing. There's no like arena kind of stadium type thing around us that's close that they could go to. Because the last 3 concerts I went to were in some form of kind of like an arena. I actually did a thing. Christiansburg had like a little thing, Tim, where you could fill out and send your recommendations for some property they had. And I put a really nice stadium or something like that, some type of venue that maybe people would want to come here, because I think that we're near 3 major colleges. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't use the college. But also, like, I don't understand. It seems like it'd be marketable. People would go.
You would think so. Like I've said before, we have those colleges in this area, and then you've got Roanoke and Hollins.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many young people around here. You would think that sort of big live music events would be popular, but apparently not.
I don't know. We haven't broke that yet, Tim. But like, Virginia Tech is one of the largest football teams in like the entire, not that me and Tim know a lot, but we live here, so we know this. It's a huge arena that I think could work for concerts when there's no football games.
Yeah. Again, I don't know why they don't think of that. Who can say?
They're very particular about people ruining the grass. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got.
There we are. All right. So this week, it's Joy's turn to pick the topic. I don't know what she's got planned, but I know she's excited about it. So, Joy, over to you.
So playing on this whole thing that I kind of said with the band and the songs, I decided me and Tim discuss like songs we think are big radio hits, or songs that I always say, I think that's been in every movie since the beginning of time. I'm constantly saying that. So this week's topic is the top songs ever with the most amount of listens on the radio. So yeah. So it's UK and US based. They did like kind of a poll across the board. Each of these songs, I've got some cool facts and like history and that kind of thing that we'll discuss. And I was actually shocked from some of these. I was, but I wasn't. I was expecting more of the songs me and Tim refused to say or something along those lines, but not true when you look at it, I guess, globally. So the number 1 most listened, played, whatever you want to talk about song is Every Breath You Take by the Police.
Really?
Yes, at a whopping 15 million plays.
Wow. I mean, that's a great song. And it was in the charts in the 80s, but I wouldn't have put that as the most played ever on radio. No, so the polls that you have, that's US and UK. It's all combined into one.
Correct. So what they did was they kind of like combined the data. So basically what it says, so for those who don't know, the song was created by the English rock band, The Police, written by Sting. And it said it quickly became a big hit in Canada and the US in 1983. And it topped the UK singles chart for 4 weeks and reached the top 10 list in about, it said like 20 other countries as well. So it was a number 1 hit in both America, Canada, and the UK in 1983. I mean, it's a good song, but I wouldn't have thought it's the most. But to be fair, it is still played a lot on the radio.
I mean, I think now's the time for me to say I haven't listened to the radio in decades.
If you're walking through the grocery store and the radio is playing, you wouldn't be shocked to hear Every Breath You Take by the Police.
No, I mean, the place where I would hear stuff like that being played is CVS. Now, CVS is a pharmacy chain, very similar to Boots for our UK listeners. And they have like piped in music in there. And that's the sort of stuff that they would play in CVS.
Exactly. So it says it is the best-selling single of all time for 1983 and the 5th best-selling single for the entire decade of the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a great song, but yeah, an unusual top of this list, it's fair to say.
Well, and a quite creepy song when you get down to it.
Exactly.
All right. So this one is not going to be a shocker to Tim. This is one he has talked about. It's one that I actually like, but I think if Tim hears it one more time, he'll probably stab himself in the eye. It is Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison.
Yeah, Brown Eyed Girl. Now, I've played that in so many bands. I probably don't ever want to play it or hear it again. In fact, when we was at the 4th of July festivities in Christiansburg, they had a great band down there. They had horns and all kinds of stuff. Really good singer. Yeah, and they had to play this song.
I mean, I love it. I grew up with it. My dad used to sing it to me. So for those who don't know, it is a 1967 hit by Van Morrison. I will say the last name Morrison is it's a good last name if you guys didn't know.
So I understand. It's way up there.
I mean, there's Van Morrison, there's Jim Morrison. Did you know John Wayne's real name was Marion Morrison?
I knew it was Marion. I didn't know it was Morrison.
So there you go, guys. Maybe we're like sixth cousins or something. I don't know. Anyway.
And also Morrison's is a supermarket chain in the UK.
And there's that famous picture with Jim Morrison sitting in front of, is it like Morrison Pharmacy or something? I don't know. Yeah. Whatever. But anyway, so it was Van Morrison, a Northern Irish singer and songwriter. Basically, it was released in 1967. It peaked at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. However, it's still considered, Van Morrison's biggest hit. It has been played more than 10 million times on radio stations across the globe. It even earned Morrison a special recognition at the Broadcast Music Awards, which I didn't know was a thing.
Yeah, I think in England they used to be, they were called the Sony Awards or something, because you'd hear radio stations way back when, you'd hear people saying they won a Sony Award for news or entertainment or whatever like that. But I mean, as with any industry, they have awards.
I mean, I guess I hadn't really, I would have assumed it was a thing, but it's not something I've like sought out. What's interesting though is apparently it was considered, it's a romantic song, but when it first came out in the 60s, it was considered risque and suggestive. Boy, have the times changed when you look at what plays on the radio nowadays. Now, the next one, Tim, is one that is not a shocker. I think we've talked about this song. I'm pretty sure it's been used in every movie since the beginning of time. It's anytime you're trying to convey a certain message, this song comes on. It's You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers.
Yeah, a classic song, but probably an overplayed classic song. And as you say, it's appeared in films, it's appeared in TV shows. At this point, it's so woven into the culture.
I mean, it doesn't shock me in any way. It says it has also been played at least 15 million times, which is kind of weird because it was 15, 10, and 15. So maybe this list isn't in exact order, but it doesn't matter. But it is the most played song on American radio individually. So the whole list is like universally. And on television in the 20th century, it is the most known song like to be on a soundtrack, period, for television in the 20th century. And that does not surprise me at all.
No, it has a very classic sound about it, which sort of it's the sound almost of a generation. You hear that and it takes you back to that time. Even if you didn't exist in that time, you can sort of picture what it would be like to be listening to it back then, especially if it's in the context of a TV show or something.
It definitely was. So it was released in 1964. It reached number 1 in the charts of the US and the UK. It is also chosen as one of the top songs of the century by the RIAA in 2001. The single was even introduced into the National Recording Registry in 2015 as a culturally historic and significant tune.
Well, I've often wondered about this. What did you say it was? Recording Registry?
Yeah. The RIAA and the National Recording Registry.
Yeah, the National Recording Registry, I think, is something to do with the Library of Congress or something. Now, how do they store it? Do they have a CD of it? Do they have a tape of it?
I have no idea. That I don't know, but I do know it's got to be something because they keep like physical copies at the National Museum or whatever it is. America,
yeah.
So.
I wonder the format. Do they have it in all the formats? Do they have it on 8-track? How does this work?
Maybe that'll be a music episode topic in the future. I'll find what's on the thing and how they're physically storing them for Tim. That's not in this article, so I don't know the answer. But I will say, to the Righteous Brothers, so I think there's 3 pieces that make this song so iconic. Like Tim says, it's giving you great 60s, that wall of sound, beautiful harmonies. His voice is like, their voices are fantastic, bar none. It's smooth, it's silky, it works well to the ear. Then you've got like that kind of contrast between the music and their voices. They layered it so well. So I get it. I get why it's this popular. And I actually do like the song and still listen to it. There you go. So that's my theory on why it is. All right. Another one that is a classic, but I don't know that I would have picked this specific song as the top song from this band or what I thought was played the most on the radio. It is Yesterday by the Beatles.
Yeah. Now, Yesterday is one of those songs which I think has been covered the most out of any song ever.
Sure.
And certainly back in the 60s, it used to be that people were covering chart hits all over the place.
Yeah.
And as we've said before, if you wanted to buy the single of Yesterday, but you couldn't afford it, you could go to Woolworths and buy a sound-alike version for much cheaper. So there was always the culture of that too. But I bet you it's had so many plays because of the covers. And even lots of the legitimate acts and bands of the time, and even up to date, are all covering Yesterday.
It's true. And when you think of the Beatles, it is one of the first things that comes to mind, I think, at least in my brain. It's hard for me to kind of quantify it because there's just so many Beatles hits, though. So I guess that's why my brain doesn't go there. But it was written by Paul McCartney and performed by the Beatles. It was a huge success. It came out in 1965. The tune reached #1 in the U.S. charts, as well as throughout the UK, of course. The melancholy ballad is about the end of a relationship, was voted the best song of the 20th century by BBC Radio. Listeners, didn't know that. That's not what I meant to say, God. Resources suggest the tune had been played at least 7 million times on the American radio and television by 1999.
Now, the interesting thing about Yesterday is I've heard Paul McCartney speak about it. And I think he said originally the lyrics were like ham and eggs or something. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. It's just like he had these throwaway lyrics. And he just thought, I think I was supposed to better write some new lyrics then. And then there you go. It's like the greatest song ever.
And that's what it comes to. It goes to show you that songwriting is just a certain skill that some people have and some people don't. And I stand by that. Some people, like, anything can flow out of them and it sounds amazing. I am not one of those people. But it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1997. And they said it's kind of hard for them to know. The last thing they knew was up to 1999. So it may be more than 7 million now. For some reason, I guess this is one of those songs that's difficult to know. That's just what I said. So anyway, all right. This is a song that shocked me, and I'm not even that familiar with it, which makes me think I think it was probably more popular in the UK. I have heard it, but it's Never My Love, The Association.
I've never heard of that. Now, when you say the association, I thought you meant the homeowners association, the people who cut our grass and get rid of the ice and the snow in the winter, and now and again they fix the siding. Is it the same people?
No, I don't think so. But this one surprised me. So it was released in 1967. Never My Love by The Association is a pop classic written by Dick and Dawn Addassary. I don't know who these people are. Though the pair had two top 40 hits as recording artists, a few got the same attention as this song. In 1999, the music publishing rights company Broadcast Music said it was the second most played song on television and the radio in the 20th century. How do we not, Tim? I feel like we need to listen to this so we know I feel like we know this. We just don't know we know this.
Yeah, maybe when we hear it, we're like, oh, it's that one. But this is not a name that I've heard of. I mean, normally anything that's classic like that, I would have heard of it, but I don't know.
I'm giving it a Google. I'm on air because I feel like if you ask me if they'll come, Where I Grow Tired of You, Never My Love, Never My Love, nothing. It doesn't, the lyrics don't even really register with me. I think I've heard it, but I would have never in a million years. Maybe it's one of those songs that's just used in the background of movies a lot. And that's where.
I mean, it could be, but at the same time, you would think that you would have heard of it. I bet when we finish recording and we have a listen to it, we're like, yeah, it's that one. I know which one that is. Somebody's
screaming at us right now. All right. Estimated the song had received around 40 years of continuous airplay. Broadcasting stations, it says it's been available basically off of since 1999. It's like at 6 million plays. It's also recognized as one of the top 200 greatest songs of the 60s by Pitchfork magazine. Tim, I don't know. I don't know why this isn't registering. The people don't even look familiar when I'm looking at the pictures. I don't. Okay, well, there you go. I guess it's often, according to Google, it's often used as a wedding song.
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's a first. Me and Tim are both like, how is this? Okay. Like you said, we're probably going to kick ourselves and feel really stupid in about 20 minutes. But You Really Got Me by the Kinks is the next one. And I know you know that song.
Yes, that is a great song. Very famous. I may have covered this before. It's one of the first recorded fuzz tones for guitar. So normally what would happen back in the 60s is that you would have an amplifier and you plug your guitar in it. And the purpose of the amplifier was to make the guitar louder. It only became later on that you'd plug your guitar into an amplifier or effects pedals and stuff like that, where you could sculpt the sound to make it however you wanted, whether you wanted it to be distorted or fuzzy sounding, or, certain different effects make it go phasery or make it chime. There's various stuff. And like the guy who worked with Jimi Hendrix, Roger Mayer, he was very instrumental in a lot of those kind of guitar effects. But you go back to when You Really Got Me was released, there really wasn't anything much out there to do that kind of stuff. So I think it's Ray Davies is the guitar player, I believe, or is it Dave Davies? I can't remember. One of the Davies brothers, I can't remember.
Gotcha.
Anyhow, he had a vision that he wanted the sound to be very distorted, that riff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and some bands like The Who were doing it by taking their amps and just going 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and it will distort to some degree. And Marshall amplifiers, very early Marshall amplifiers, were designed to distort when you turn them all the way up to 10. But he had a very particular vision of this fuzz tone he wanted. So he had a Vox AC30 amplifier in the studio, and he took a razor blade and he cut slits in each of the two speakers. And what you hear on the track is the fact that the speaker is distorting because the cone or the paper outside the cone and the cone have got slits in them. So it's vibrating weird and distorting, which is the sound he wanted to get. So there you go. Interesting nerd guitar fact for you.
Well, apparently it was originally performed in a blues style, so I understand why they wanted rough around the edges. The song You Really Got Me by the Kinks was inspired by Big Bill Bosey and Lead Belly. I don't know. 2 versions of the song were recorded, but the second version was the one that was used for the final single. The tune hit #1 on the UK charts, and then it was UK, then America. It went #1. The American rock band Van Halen even adopted the song and created their own version in 1978, which I'm assuming you've heard, Tim.
Yeah, it's on Van Halen 1. Yeah. It's one of the first few tracks on Van Halen 1. And there's much like Live and Let Die, where there's a whole lot of people who think that is a Guns N' Roses song. There's a whole proportion of people who think that You Really Got Me is a Van Halen song. And I've read interviews in guitar magazines. It's either I think it's Ray Davies is a guitar player, or is he the singer? I don't know. Whichever one of the Davis brothers, the guitar player guy from the Kinks. I've read interviews with him in guitar magazines where he said, they'd be touring like in the 90s and stuff. And people would come up to him and say, hey, great show. I really love that you covered that Van Halen song.
See, in my mind, I've never once associated it with the Van Halen version. I've only ever really heard the Kinks version. And I actually burnt myself out on this song back in the day when you used to, physically, put your disc into your computer and burn songs on totally legal software that I had. I burned a version of, and the first song on it was the Kinks. And so when I would go, I put it in my car, and for some reason I kept forgetting to bring out new CDs to put in the car. So every time I turned the car on, this was the song I heard, to the point that I never wanted to hear it again.
I have a similar thing. I used to have a Skoda car years ago, which is like a small compact UK car. And I was a pioneer of having the iPod in the car. I had an Alpine head unit that had a CD slot in it and stuff, but it had a cable you ran into the glove box and you'd plug your iPod in it. And then it would read it up and put it up on the display. So, I was very early into this digital music in your vehicle. Yeah. And whenever you turn the car on, it would always play the first track alphabetically. And it was a song by Chickenfoot, and I think it's called Avasia Revolution or something. It was like a sort of semi-instrumental track. And every time you turn the car on, you'd hear like the first 5 seconds of this song, long enough for me to press a few buttons to get to the bit that I wanted to. And even now when I hear it, I just think of all the times I started my car and this thing would come up.
So another one that happened to me, I learned when I first moved away to go to college, which ironically was Radford University, which was not moving away from me now because I live 5 minutes from, but at the time it was moving away, about an hour and a half from my parents' house. And I got a CD player kind of alarm clock. Mm-hmm. Well, I put my CD in it. And now I can't even remember. It was some pop punk emo song. I don't know. I think it burned my brain. I never wanted to hear it again because it's what I heard every time I had to wake up for my 8 a.m. clock. And I hated it so much. I remember I took the CD out, broke it in half, and said, never again.
You was done, completely done.
Oh, though the worst one though was the time I put it had like a radio built in it, and I didn't pay attention when I went to sleep. I was woken up at 7 a.m. to just pure static at full volume. It was the scariest thing to ever wake up to. And then, of course, I think I've told you this story about the Circle of Life, my friend. When she put it on her thing, yeah. Mm-hmm. Don't use the Circle of Life as the song to wake up to, because if you don't know, it's very loud and intense.
Exactly. Do you know what? I've had clock radios over the years. Yeah. I don't think I've ever set it to wake to the radio or wake to the tape. It's always just waking up to that annoying buzzer.
I mean, I think the buzzer would have led me down less PTSD. I mean, when I say I almost had a heart attack when I woke up to pure static, I must have not paid any attention. The volume was all the way up, and it was like 7 a.m, pure silence, and all you hear is static. That is the most terrifying thing to hear out of nowhere. If you've ever had it happen to you, I'm sorry. You're lucky to be alive, actually. But anyway, the Kinks have been played approximately 8 million times over the years. And then they said it's also frequently played alongside many other hits from the Kinks are also big in radio spiel.
Yeah, All the Day and All the Night, Sunny Afternoon, Lola, all those tracks that we've covered before.
Exactly. So the next one has a really cool fact. So the song is not really that shocking, but I have a really cool fact that I was shocked to hear. So it is Stand By Me by Ben E. King.
Yeah, now this got reissued in the 90s, I remember, because it was around the time I first started playing guitar, and I worked out how to play that riff, that bum, 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 boom, 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 boom. So, and I can't remember why it got reissued. It was probably in a film or something like that.
So this kind of plays into my fact. There are 400 recorded versions of this song.
Oh.
400 of this song have been produced over the years, and experts estimate that they have been played more than 7 million times by 1999.
Wow.
400 recorded. We're not talking about just like everyday bands. Like these are actual recorded versions from artists. 400 people have covered this song.
Now, I wonder whether Bruce Willis covered it on his landmark album, The Return of Bruno.
He should have if he didn't.
So the CD's just over there in a cabinet. I won't get it now, but maybe at the end of the recording, I'll just pull it down and have a check.
Okay, but basically they're just saying that it's almost impossible to not have encountered 1 to 2 covers. It was produced in 1961. It was performed by Ben E. King, and it is derived from the spiritual text called Stand By Me, Father, apparently.
I didn't know that.
I did not either, but I was shocked to hear there are 400 versions of it. But then when I started thinking about it, I'm really not. Not really.
Yeah, it's an iconic song. I can understand why a lot of people would probably want to cover it.
It's been, I'm sure, used in 1,000 to 3,000 movies, and a lot of times you get a lot of covers for bands doing songs in movie soundtracks, right? Like, it'll be the Kinks doing a version of a Who song that just happens. You never really hear it anywhere else besides that one movie. So there we are. It has been named one of the 500 greatest songs of all time by the Rolling Stars. They're stars now. The Rolling Stars, everybody. The Rolling Stones. And it was also honored by the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2012. Now, Ben E. King is obviously not alive, but when he was alive, I imagine he made lots of money off of this song.
Yeah, assuming he wrote it. I don't know whether he was the songwriter or the primary songwriter.
That's a good point. I don't even know who wrote it. We'd have to do a Google on that one. Whoever wrote that song, if you're still alive, you probably live in a much bigger house than me.
Yeah, or their estate, or whoever the publishing rights were sold to.
So the next one is a song we've talked about, and I brought up is a fan favorite of my mother's. There was talk about using this name in one of her child, like me or one of the other children. She talked about naming us after this song. My twin sister's name is Brandy, and she's named after the Fine Looking Glass song, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, or Young Looking Glass, whatever. It's Layla, Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I can understand that. This, I know for a fact, this is a staple of US classic rock radio, because when I first started visiting this country, I had a Sony Ericsson phone, as many people did. Did you ever have a Sony Ericsson?
I didn't. Charlie did, though, and I know exactly probably the phone you're talking about. I can visualize it.
It was like a little silver phone, and it had a little thumb thing in the middle, and it wasn't a touchscreen, but it was one of the very first ones that you could put MP3 files on, and you couldn't really store much on it at all. But one thing it did have was an FM radio, which was very unusual. Yeah. And as a side note, I understand that almost every phone everywhere ever made has the capacity to receive FM radio, but they choose not to enable that feature.
I've learned that too. I thought it was interesting because I remember whenever those apps that came out, that are radio based and stuff. And I was like, are phones radios? And then I gave it a Google, and they are, basically.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's radio based because it's connecting to a tower and GSM or 4G or however it's done. But in the chipset that they use, it has the ability to receive the FM band on your phone. But as I said, most manufacturers, Apple included, just choose not to enable that for whatever reason. But anyhow, further to my point about my Sony Ericsson phone. So I had my little silver Sony Ericsson phone, and it had the FM radio on it. And I remember waking up the first few days of when I came to visit here. And of course, you had the little headphones that plugged in the bottom that worked as an aerial. And going through the radio dial to 96.3 ROV, and one of the first songs I heard was Layla.
There you go. So it is probably Eric Clapton's best known song. It's written by Eric Clapton and James Gordon and produced by Derek and the Dominoes in 1970. According to writers, the song was inspired by a love story that originated in the 17th century Arabia. Clapton's secret love for his friend's wife.
Yeah, Patty Boyd, George Harrison's wife.
Oh, yeah, you talked about that. Yep, so that's what the song's about. I didn't realize that was the friend, but now that you said that, I remember you saying that once before. Layla became an all-time hit in no time, winning the Grammy for Best Rock Song in 1993. It was broadcast almost nonstop on the radio, in stores, and on television around the globe between 1992 and 1993. As of 2011, they estimate it has been broadcast 6 million times.
I can totally believe that. The other interesting fact about Layla is, Eric Clapton gets the kudos for being a guitar hero. All the best guitar parts in Layla are played by Duane Allman.
I knew you were going to bring that. And let's be honest, Eric Clapton has not aged well, so I don't mind you saying that.
No, I mean, legendary musician name who's been a part of all this different music. But in later years, his comments and viewpoints on things are just not cool and not anything I'd want to be associated with. So it's funny because I follow Guitar World and Guitar Player magazine on Twitter. Maybe I'll soon be following them on Threads, you can say. But they'll post an article, and it'll talk about Eric Clapton's guitar tone in the 70s, and he used this guitar amp, blah, 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 blah. And then all the comments on the bottom is like, yeah, we're done with that guy.
Yeah, no, me and Tim are not, we're not, I don't know. I would say me and Tim are very reserved when it comes to cancel culture, but there are some people that just don't get a pass. And he doesn't get a pass because he just goes on, he just spews hate for no reason. He just will stand on stage and say the most hateful, disgusting things you've ever heard and then walk off. And you're like, for what? Why?
Yeah, I mean, this is Eric Clapton's sort of racist rants in the 70s. I mean, no one should have ever heard from him ever again after that. I don't know how he came back from that. That's terrible. It's not acceptable at all.
It's just there's certain things where we're like, okay, separate the art from the artist and all that good stuff. But this man is just really, he's gross. He's just gross. Sorry if you're an Eric Clapton fan, but it's the truth. Anyway, so the next song is one that Charlie sings all the time, randomly, and asks me if I want to rule the world. It's Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Tears for Fears.
Yeah, 80s classic. I believe it's from the album Songs in the Big Chair, I think. But it's such an iconic 80s song. Tears for Fears played it at the fabulous concert Nebworth 90, which, as we know, people Live Aid gets all the credit, but everyone knows Nebworth 90 is the big concert of that era.
And if you haven't listened to that episode, just go back a while. We did a whole episode on that. But basically, it was created by English pop rock band Tears for Fears. Everybody Wants to Rule the World was released in 1985, which kind of falls along with what Tim was saying about the album. Music critics praised the tune and ranked it as one of the group's most significant signature songs. The song even won Best Single title at the Brit Awards in 1986. In 2015, after 30 years of its release, the tune was honored by the annual BMI Awards in London for surpassing the mark of 6 million radio airplays. And it is one of the most songs that anybody would ever know from Tears for Fears. Their other popular hit was probably Shout.
Yeah, and they also had Sowing the Seeds of Love. Was that a hit that happened here?
I've heard it, but it wasn't like a massive hit by any stretch. I feel like they had a few songs that were more UK based.
Yeah, no, they had Mad World was another track that they had.
That was huge here. Yeah. That one's one that I think has been used in a lot of movies and stuff.
Well, there was a famous cover of Mad World from the Donnie Darko soundtrack, which actually went to the #1 at Christmas in the UK.
No, Charlie is a huge, I'll give you guys a little story. When we first started dating, he was obsessed with Donnie Darko. And one of the first things I remember we dated kind of exclusively long distance for a while, which I know Tim did this too. So he probably understands. I remember he sent me a package, and one of the things in it was the Donnie Darko soundtrack, along with some other things. And so I distinctly remember listening to that soundtrack quite a bit.
Yeah, I used to send Hannah stuff like that. I once sent her a bottle of HP sauce. If you know what you know what HP sauce is? It's
you guys' version of Heinz 57, basically.
Well, no, it's what you would call like A1 steak sauce.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, I guess it's more A1 than Heinz 57. You get it in Canada too. It's popular there as well.
Exactly. And do you know why it's called HP sauce?
No.
It stands for Houses of Parliament because it was originally sold in the Houses of Parliament. And the other day I was like, really? And we still have the bottle in the house, the one that I sent her 20 plus years ago. And it actually has a picture of the Houses of Parliament on the front of it. I mean,
it was right in front of your face and you never knew. I was thinking more Heinz 57, but I guess you're right. A1. Sorry, I cut you off, Tim. I was visioning. So is it lighter or is it darker like A1 sauce?
It's brown. It's like A1 steak sauce, basically. It's a little bit more fruity. That's the best way I could describe it.
I cut Tim off. He was going to say, yeah, I never knew. House of Parliament. Interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense why it came from the UK, though.
There we are.
And what's Tim is very keen. Another one, you can get it now at like Kroger, by the way. I'm pretty sure it's in the international aisle at like the grocery store. But another one that is a UK staple is the Heinz and the light blue can beans. And I actually do think they are the best baked beans.
Yeah, Heinz baked beans are your benchmark of your baked beans. I mean, they're the best beans that you can get. Here, they're called pork and beans, and they're not quite the same.
You have to get the one that like comes from the UK and eat it on toast. It is actually really good. Don't judge it, everybody. I've done it many times for breakfast. It's quite good.
Yeah, I don't like putting soggy stuff on toast.
I don't know. It works, Tim. It works. You have to toast. You toast the toast, really toast the toast. Wow, that was a record. No, guys. You toast the bread. Really good. And then you put just a little thin layer of like a butter or something on it. And then you put the beans on it. And it's quite good.
There we are. Though I would like to be controversial at this juncture and say I do not like jam on toast.
I'm not a big fruit person. Like I would love to be more into fruity kind of things like jams and like strawberries. I've just never been a big fruit person. I'm big into my veggies. I love my veggies, but I could take or leave jam or jelly.
Yeah, I can live without it. The last thing I would do with jam is put it on toast. It's just like the thought of it. It's a savory sort of sweet mix thing, and I wouldn't like that.
So I'm guessing you're not going to be eating a peanut butter and jelly anytime soon.
No, I mean, as we said before, peanut butter is not a flavor I really grew up with.
Yeah.
It's something that my palate has adapted to because I now live here in the land of the free and peanut butter. And I do like those Take 5 bars that have the peanut butter, the pretzel, and the chocolate. They're absolutely fantastic. But in the realm of peanut butter and jelly, I would not want that.
See, and I can't eat peanuts. I get, it's not like your classic allergy where like your throat swells up, but I do have an allergic reaction to peanuts. I learned it. When I was a kid, I kept noticing when I ate it, it made me feel sick. I didn't feel well. And then as I got older, I learned that it was basically an intolerance because, peanuts poison. And basically most humans have adapted to be able to eat said poison. It's really what peanuts are. And if you guys still know that, give it a Google. I'm not joking about that. There you go. So I'm not, but I do like almond butter. I'll eat almond butter and things like that.
Yeah, we had some vegan butter in the house. Now we haven't been to Kroger for like 2 weeks, so we're really scrapping it up at the moment. For some reason, we bought vegan butter. I don't know. I'll eat regular butter, but we had vegan butter, and I had that this morning, and that's made of like almonds or some kind of nut type thing.
Cashew butter is a big one too.
Yeah, it might even have had that in it too. I mean, it was fine.
There we go. There's Tim's review of vegan butter. It's fine. All right. So the next one is another song that is not shocking. And this one is definitely in at least 3 movies I can think of off the top of my head. It is Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, Frankie Valli.
Yes. Now, I think this one got covered as well as part of a comic relief thing later on.
Yeah. I've heard covers of this song, so that's not surprising to me. I think of that kind of, but I think it's where it's got that da 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 da. It's a very iconic riff in general.
Sure, and we used to play this in Moroccan Soul, the band that I was in a number of years ago. And you get to that bit, and then we all used to jump up and down on stage, and the audience would follow the same, and they'd be going da 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 da. So it has a really good sort of audience participation type feel to it.
I think when I think of it, I think of the movie 10 Things I Hate About You. There's one part where he's singing this song to her, but that's about all. That's the first movie I could think of. But yeah. So it was written by Bob Gatto. I don't think I said that wrong. Bob Crew. Can't Take My Eyes Off of You is a love song that topped the charts during the 60s. It was replicated and covered by a host of other creators over the years. Can't Take My Eyes Off You has become significant in movie and film, so I was right on the money there. The song was listed on the BMI collection of most aired tunes in the radio, falling just behind You've Lost That Lovely Feeling, which we've already talked about. By 1999, the tune had received more than 6 million broadcasts.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. That's something that you could play on an oldies station and probably play on a reasonably up-to-date music station and completely play it non-ironically just because people would like it.
Yeah, and I think that it's one that I think anybody, even if they don't know it by name, if you played it for them, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I know that song.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
All right, so this one is a favorite of mine. And I think it's a favorite of mine because he's a favorite artist, but this is hard for me because like I don't know. I don't know that I would have thought it was this popular, but then the more I started, mulling it over, it is Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, Otis Redding.
Yes, I can understand that. I mean, outside of the radio play, again, it's one of those songs that almost defines a generation. You know exactly where it's from. And it's been featured in TV shows and featured in commercials, and that song is everywhere.
And it's also been covered about 1,000 times by every band that does any type of beach vibe music ever. You go to any type of these little beachy band. What are they called, Tim? What kind of music is it?
I believe it's called shag music.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yes. If you go to any of these local kind of concerts, my parents really enjoy that sound. So I guess I grew up on this and every version of Sitting on under the boardwalk you could ever imagine. But yeah. And so it was recorded by Otis Redding and guitarist Steve Cropper in 1967. It was one of the first ever posthumous singles to top the charts in the U.S. I did not know that.
There we go. And Steve Cropper is an amazing musician. He's a great guitar player and songwriter. And he was part of the Stax house band. And he was in the Blues Brothers. I mean, he's not a technician. He's not Eddie Van Halen, but he has a very unique way that he used to play the guitar. And, he's a legend.
Well, and I think he's wrote quite a few songs. I know him from the Blues Brothers. That's where I know him from, but
yeah, well, absolutely 100%. I think he's probably known more as a songwriter than a guitar player, but I'd say from a guitar perspective, he is a legend.
All right. So basically, and it says the relaxing tune. It is kind of a relaxing song. Actually took number 3 in the UK singles in 1967. And it was sadly just recorded before Otis Redding met his ultimate demise in a plane crash. If you guys didn't know, in the December of the same year. Basically, BMI's list of most played radio songs of all time in the 20th century, the tune ranks up there again with 6 million broadcasts by 1999, and it's still vastly possible. That's what it is. Still vastly popular and played pretty regularly on the radio.
Absolutely. Was it Otis Redding? You say he was killed in a plane crash?
Yep, in December of the same year. So the song he didn't actually get to see it become famous.
Well, that's a real shame. I remember when I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they had fragments of that plane crash in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know quite why you'd want to see that. That's not something I really wanted to see. And it's just like a panel of an aircraft that was sign written with Otis Redding. I said, "Oh, this is from the aircraft that killed Otis Redding." I was like, "Yeah, I probably didn't want to see that."
I mean, I guess in some way I understand them wanting to preserve it, though. I don't know. I don't think I'd care to see it, but. No, preserving. I don't know.
I did see. I took lots of pictures, but I didn't take a picture of that. I thought it was weird.
It's kind of like, so I was surprised and if you do this, it's not that I'm judging you. It was just weird for me because I had never seen someone do this. When I was in Utah, one of Charlie's family members passed when we lived there, and they took pictures at the funeral. Like family photos at the funeral, and said it was common in a lot of Mormon kind of religious and like just in Utah. But like, I've never been to a funeral where you take pictures.
Certainly graveside, no. I mean, I can understand it if you was at some kind of gathering afterwards and the family was all together. I can understand why you might want to do that. But certainly if you're at the graveside, if the service or ceremony or however it's being conducted, why do you want to take pictures of that?
It's just not it's not like something I want to look back and be like, oh yeah, that's the day we went to Ted's funeral. Like,
I don't know. That's odd.
It was very weird to me, but to each their own. The first time I went to Louisiana. So for those who don't know, my father is Cajun. I've talked about this. This is why I was so interested in learning the French language and things of that nature. So the first time I went to Louisiana, we went to Morgan City, where he's from. And on the gravestones there, they have little pictures. Have you ever seen those, Tim, where you flip it up and you can see a picture of the person? I'd never seen that. And I have an aunt. Well, she would have been my aunt, but she died very as a teenager. And they flipped it up and she looks exactly like me. And it was actually kind of creepy because everybody looked at the gravestone and they looked at me and they looked at the gravestone and they looked at me. And I was like, I don't think I realized that till now.
Interesting.
Yeah. And of course, I have a twin sister, so they looked exactly like her, too.
Genetics are fascinating, let me tell you.
It is really weird. It was just random because, Dad had talked about her, but I mean, she died when she was 15, so it's not like anybody we knew. And my father has 13 or 14 brothers and sisters. There's a lot of them, which it is what it is. But yeah, I didn't know that they had those. It's cool, though, in Louisiana. A lot of the gravestones are held above water line. Like, they're up in those, things because, they don't want water in areas. So they have a lot of those kind of I don't know what they're called, it's not like a grave. It's like they keep the boxes up in the little chambers or whatever. But they do
mausoleum.
That's the word I'm looking for. Tim, finally, I felt like I was playing charades. I'm like, the little boxes with people. That's horrible. I couldn't. Anyway, but they do have a few that are still at the ground and you can see the little pictures. All right, moving along. We're going to pretend I didn't do that. Okay. This song, Tim's dying, guys, is I heard this song ever again, it'd be one too many. It's Eye of the Tiger by Survivor.
See, I see where you're coming from, but I don't feel burnt out with Eye of the Tiger. I feel pretty good about Eye of the Tiger. I don't think I've heard it too many times that I can't enjoy it.
That's fair. So when we were at my parents' house for Father's Day, my twin sister's husband opened a card the kids got him, and it played like Eye of the Tiger. And so they were opening it for my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, she just kept saying Rocky," and I'm like, "Eye of the Tiger." She's like, "All I hear is Rocky." I'm like, "Eye of the Tiger is the name of the song." Like it just like did not register with mom at all what I was trying to tell her. Anyway.
Have you ever seen the TV series Flight of the Conchords?
Yes.
Now, Hannah loves Flight of the Conchords. I love it too. It's sort of ridiculous, absurdist humor, which really appeals to me. But there's one episode where Murray, their manager, has got them a greetings card deal. Mm-hmm. And they go into for this greeting cards deal, and then, hilarity ensues, and they don't have the greeting cards deal. But the thing is, it's presented in the episode that it's absurd. They're trying to make it in the music business, and all he can do is get them to play a tune in a greetings card that's one of their songs. But now, that's where money's to be made. You go into your CVS, your Walgreens, or wherever, your Targets, look in the card racks, you're going to find greetings cards that play Kiss songs, that play Queen songs, that play Taylor Swift songs, whatever. And they're making money on that. And it's funny that like early 2000s, that was deemed as some kind of ridiculous joke. And now it's actually a legitimate revenue stream.
Well, and like people who do jingles, like people who literally write jingles for like, you know what I mean, for TV. I imagine at one point in time when they were originally doing this, people are like, oh, that seems so silly. There are people who wrote jingles for TV shows and stuff and commercials that are just as iconic, if not more iconic than some of the songs we're talking about on here.
Sure, absolutely 100%.
I mean, I don't know about you. There's probably we're probably going to differentiate on this because I'm sure Tim grew up with a little bit more UK television, obviously. But like the Folgers, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. It's coffee. Like that's an iconic jingle. And
you know who I believe wrote that jingle?
Who's that?
Barry Manilow.
Of course. Of course. I don't know why, but that seems right.
Yeah, Barry Manilow, before he was super famous, indeed, even into the early part of his career, he was a jingle writer. A lot of those sort of 60s and 70s jingles that are so catchy, like the Folgers one, all written by Barry Manilow. That's where he got his start. And in fact, if you go and see Barry Manilow live, he does a medley of all those jingles.
That's so cool. So is there like a UK jingle that your UK listeners would know, Tim?
I can't think of anything that's terribly iconic off the top of my head.
We'll let him think on it. And then if he thinks of it, he can yell it out later on or bring it up the next. I was just curious if the jingle is more of an American thing.
I mean, certainly American media is more driven by advertising and trying to sell you stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas UK has commercial radio and commercial TV, but it's not quite as blatant as it is in this country. So,
I mean, that's fair. I always find it very interesting that in the UK you can't advertise like pharmaceuticals, whereas you can here.
Yeah, you can't advertise doctors, you can't advertise funeral parlors, you can't advertise prescription medication. There's lots of things you can't advertise.
To be fair, I don't think that I've ever seen anyone advertise a funeral parlor in America either.
When I lived in Ferrum, I saw that on daytime TV.
Maybe I just didn't watch enough daytime television. No, most of what daytime television is when I was growing up was telling you that one about, there's that one that's like, they're always joking, like, are you well, join this lawsuit, I'm talking about, Tim. Were you exposed to this Agent Orange back in the 70s? Join this lawsuit. America's very lawsuit heavy. I remember that being a big thing. And then it's my money and I want it now. That's another one. All right.
Yeah. And only available in this exclusive TV offer.
I wanted those zoo books, though. I never got them as kids. Do you remember the zoo books, Tim? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
They're like these like magazines, and they were like a huge, you could like get like a subscription, and they were on different animals. And there was like a really cute commercial called Zoo Books. And I wasn't that interested in learning about animals, but they marketed it so well. I wanted it, but they were expensive. So my parents were like, no, I'm not. It'd be one of those things they ordered me, Tim, and I would look at it for 2 seconds and throw it down and walk away.
Oh, I remember being a member of the Humpty Dumpty Club. where they used to send you a package every quarter or every month. Probably every quarter, I'd imagine. And it had activities and things to do. And it came like in a big, hard cardboard envelope that had like a little tab, and you opened it and you get it. And as a kid, I used to be really excited when I got my Humpty Dumpty Club envelope.
Well, there you go. I got the highlights, like magazines, like the kid magazines that you still see in like the waiting room nowadays. You go to the doctor. I did have those. I like them mostly for the little, like, find the boot in this picture.
Yeah, that's what I think Humpty Dumpty Club was like that. And there was stickers in there, and there's things you could color in. And there'd be like a little book maybe telling you about a fact about a mouse or something. I don't know.
Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe it was Humpty Dumpty in the UK and highlights in America, because that's very close. Anyway.
Maybe. I'm going to have to Google like late 70s Humpty Dumpty Club thing. And it was one of the things, I'll see it and then like my head will just go, oh, that was it.
All right. So back to Eye of the Tiger. It has been played 4.5 million times on the radio. It has sold, but this is the weird fact, Tim, and I thought you'd find this interesting because you're always very interested in media, kind of like different forms of media. So it has sold more than 4.1 million digital downloads in the United States. And it was certified platinum by in August of 1882, signifying the sales of over 2 million vinyl copies.
There we go. It's quite the track, especially, I mean, I've never seen Rocky, but I mean, I am aware of the Rocky connection. And to be honest with you, I'm more aware of it being a song that's in a Tenacious D skit, which is not safe for this podcast.
I mean, that's fair. Well, that is the last one I have, Tim, but that is our top 12 songs that are the most played on the radio. The only one that surprised me was The Association, and I'm sure we made someone angry out there because I'm absolutely sure me and Tim know this song, and we do not know that we know it.
Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I can't even say it, listeners of this podcast, I currently have record and play pressed on this Zoom meeting. As soon as I hit stop and it goes clink, Joy and I will be pulling that up and listening to it.
We'll give you our thoughts next week when we re-record again.
There we go.
All right. Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
To remind me of another day to love.